So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way, there's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. So they are aware of those thoughts. And yes, it takes effort. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And when you start looking and observing those thoughts, I think you are like Gandalf. Because Gandalf also said, you may not pass, when he meant like that kind of severity when it comes to how we make up our mind about things. That's the kind of energy or intention that begins to create the biggest volume of change in our life. And I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this. And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they're aligned to that future. And that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it. And that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master, you can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. So you take the prayer out on the road now. You take the prayer, you're the living example of the prayer. That's where it matters the most. And that's when people start getting suspicious and say, Sean, man, did you change your medication? I mean, you're looking way too happy all of a sudden. Well, you're not relying on anything outside of you to bring you joy. You're overcoming yourself every day. And people say to me, well, why do you do your meditations in the morning? I always say, easy. Because if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is easy. Because that's the biggest mastery, right, is the self. And so people are waking up to that, and they enjoy the process of seeing when they make those type of changes, the feedback that's happening in their lives, the synchronicities, the opportunities, the coincidences, those serendipities that are starting to happen, and they're going, wow, I am powerful. Hey, I am a creator. And nobody's excluded from the equation. That's what makes it so cool.